Today I have with me Shahz. I don't think you're on a team right now, right, Shahz? You just left
No,
G2?
I'm still signed to GT right now.
Still signed to G2. Are you looking to play pro right now or stay as a content creator? I actually haven't asked you this off of this.
Yeah.
I don't even know if this is something you can expand on.
No, I still want to compete. I definitely still want to compete, but the market and like the nature, like how limited franchising is right now, makes it like a little difficult. It's not out of the question yet.
So our history, we go back. I mean, you were grinding RWS before you were grinding ACS, if you feel me. Like, we played CS years and years ago, like on Cloud9 and then Echo Fox and then again on Misfits. You've played CS now against me before that. I mean, hell, dude, hold up. Let me show you a little gem right here. Can you see this? Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember exactly that match.
Yeah, that's when you beat us and you like knocked us out when we were on Cloud9, and then you came in Cloud9 like right after. So going back years and years, like you were here before there was VC money in gaming, and you were here when there was VC money, and then now there's no VC money again. I mean, take us through the fucking journey, dude. Like we've been around the block, but compare those old days to like the middle days to now from your perspective.
Yeah, so the first event I ever went to was in ESA lane in Counter-Strike Source, actually, like my senior year of high school. So
in the hotel, no?
Yeah, in the Dallas hotel. So that was the highest league at the time, but you know there weren't orgs, there wasn't money. We had like the last place prize money forwarded to pay for our flights, and 5 of us were in a hotel room. That was quite interesting. And yeah, we went to this LAN in Dallas, and that was my first LAN. That was like 12 years ago.
You were playing with like Mo and Clown, right?
Right? No, that was in CS:GO. I was playing with like a bunch of other 16-year-olds. Like, okay. Actually, one person, Casey Foster. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, dude.
And
Daze
like
was
on our
stuff
team
now? Casey Foster like codes stuff for CS now, right?
Yeah, he does some sort of like refrag or like project. Yeah, Daze was on that team too. Actually, he left like right before the LAN. So that was my first event, and that was like a hotel ballroom. And then even CS:GO, like the tournaments, you know, were like hotel ballrooms. It was very casual. Like people could walk up to you. Like literally, I remember one tournament I had someone just vaping behind me, blowing the vape smoke while I'm playing, and I was like too like young or nervous to say anything. I was just.
So HLTV has stats for me from like 2013 on Frost Gaming. I actually didn't know you played with Daze.
In Counter-Strike Source, yeah. So he like left his main team. He was a top player and decided to join us, like a bunch of kids that just qualified for like invite at the time in Source. And then he like decided to step down, like leave and like wait for this like friends team or something.
Yeah, because he was like an ass to you in like the CS:GO days where I knew both of you guys. So I had no idea that he actually played with you in Source. Remember like when you played that tournament with us for Cloud9 and he like broke down the demo just for you specifically?
That was post iBUYPOWER incident. So that's why he was targeting me. Him and Steel were targeting me. That was right after they got banned that he made that.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't remember, like Shahz got like crazy heat from like those iBUYPOWER guys who had like big figures like in the scene, right? Just because like you were kind of involved in some extent talking to Richard. Is that what it was?
So when it happened, so Richard got like the league text from Dborn or whatever to make that big article, and he reached out to Jack while I was on C9, and Jack was like, you need to tell him everything you know, because like obviously it's gonna be like a pretty big deal.
Oh yeah, that's right. Jack was like super involved with that. I remember now.
Yeah, he was like, you need to tell him everything you know. So he put me on a call with Richard, and I was like, okay, like, and then right when that article came out is when like a Valve dev like messaged me on Steam without being on my friends list, or like forced added me to his friends list, and he said you're gonna be receiving an email, and then I got an email from Valve's lawyers saying like we need a statement from you, and I was like, okay, well that was pretty serious. Like I have to say everything. Like I'm a kid. I was a kid. Like I had to tell him everything. So I did. I told him everything I knew. It was like $1 billion corporation's lawyers telling me.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
No, I always thought it was like super. Like that's why honestly I don't know. Like you were obviously my boy all throughout CS:GO and even into like Valorant, and I thought it was so unfair. Like some of those criticisms that you got, and, like I felt like the stands you took were all like morally good stances. Like, how do you feel? Do you feel like the community like mistreated you a lot early on? Because I always thought the community was ridiculous to you, even in like the early days of CS:GO and like the middle days of CS, or I'm sorry, Valorant. Like the early days of Valorant, I feel like the community was like unfairly harsh on you in certain scenarios.
Yeah, I think I got a lot of heat for that Empire situation. Like my hand was forced there. I won't say like I won't sit here and say like, oh, I was like the most unlucky person. Like I think the way I reacted to situations also played a role in how I was treated.
Yeah.
Like I can say that like the Empire situation specifically, the facts of the situation were like skewed so much and like weaponized to like kind of bring hate to me because like everyone bet on like CS:GO matches back then, and so I had a bet on the match. Like a match that was like guaranteed win. Usually you would just bet on, and if you max bet, you get like a free up Asimov, right? Like if you say it's a guaranteed win. So I had iBUYPOWER winning the match. And then when I found out like 5 minutes before the rigged match or the fixed match that it was gonna be fixed, I switched my bet. Like I'm not gonna lose my skins because these guys are throwing a match. I switched my bet, and that's probably why like I didn't catch a punishment or something for having a bet on the match. Was because I told Valve like, yo, like they like did a whole investigation. I told them like, hey, I had a bet on this and I switched it because I didn't want to lose my skins since I found out it was fixed. And like they probably saw that because you can't pull a bet back.
Yeah.
So there's no way in hell I was going to lose my skins knowing that they were going to throw this match.
Yeah, that was back when like all the pros were betting on games and stuff. Like there was no one like coming down from like a higher power saying like, hey, pros can't bet on games. It was like publicly talked about too. Like it was accepted.
Skins.
Yeah, it was like accepted within the community that like the pros would bet on the games. Obviously, they wouldn't really be betting on their own games. Like that seems like a moral line they weren't willing to cross. But I think it was pretty like well known that like almost all the pro players were. So like that, let me add that context in. Like even someone like myself, like I was betting on games like early on in CS:GO, and then when I found out the whole iBUYPOWER thing happened, obviously the devs came down and were like, no more betting on games. And at that point, you know, everyone stopped betting because they saw the ramifications. They understood, I guess, what could happen potentially with like bad actors in the scene. And I think it was cut down a lot. I'm not saying it stopped, but behind closed doors, I think it still kept going on. But that was like a crazy time in CS:GO. Like all of the gambling and the betting and like the DDoSing and shit like that was going on.
It was wild,
dude.
And like that was a long time ago. Like the Empire situation gets brought up today in like Valorant conversations and stuff. And like, you know, it's impossible for everyone to know like the correct story. So that's why people think like, oh, like the story like that when it's weaponized is like Shahz bet on this game knowing it was fixed and then he snitched on them. And like that's not how it went down, you know. And it's like unfortunate, but it's so long ago now.
No, yeah. So I actually think I had a bet on netcode guides that game. I'm not gonna lie, like, because it was netcode guides versus iBUYPOWER, and netcode guides was a company that Dazed owned. which is like which is crazy. It was like a kind of video, like a teaching site or whatever for CS. And I think like what happened is like people knew iBUYPOWER was dead. Like they just got back from the major, right? It was like they just got back from the major. They bombed out in groups, which everyone in the NA thought they were like the best team, and they kept flopping at majors. Like they couldn't get out of groups. And so I just knew they were a dead team. Like Steel and Dazed kind of like hated each other behind closed doors at the time. And I don't think anyone really thought much of it when Netcode Guides. Like I honestly didn't think anything of it. When Netcode Guides won, I was like, that shit was expected. So, yeah, I don't know. It was just like such a weird time frame. And the way that Valve came down on them was kind of crazy. What do you think of like the dev presence in Valorant versus CS? Like, because Valve was so hands off. That was like one of the only things they ever did in CS in our time. What do you think of that versus like this?
Dude, it's night and day. Like in Valve, I remember the only time I ever spoke to the devs was like at the major after parties.
Yeah.
And they're like quite set in their ways. If we like talk about certain guns or something, it's more so like this is how they're gonna do it. This is how they want to do it, and this is how they're gonna do it. With Riot, they're very hands on. I remember originally, like we had a call early Valorant. We had a call with one of the like a bunch of the devs and a bunch of pro players and talking about the meta. And this was when like Sky was OP and Sky flashes we needed to get nerfed, and we were talking about that. I forgot what other points.
Dude.
Astra nerf.
Yeah.
And those things happened right after that call. Actually, when it comes to skin inputs, I've had the person that makes skins message me like why I like the jet knife, like what are the things about the jet knife that I like, because I'm known to use it. And then I noticed that the champion's knife was the same thing as like a kunai. So like it's kind of cool how no matter what they'll reach out to like pros or influencers and stuff and like really gather opinions.
Yeah, dude, like it's wild. I told my chat like a couple days ago, I like ended my stream early because Riot Ice Chest, do you know who that is?
I've seen the name, yeah.
Yeah, so like he's like the head of the leagues in North America for like Challenger and VCT, and like determines a lot on it. And he heard me commenting on like the ecosystem and the format. And he was like, "Hey, dude, like I don't want to type in chat and like talk about this, but you down for a call to talk about it?" And he literally just like the next day carved out like an hour and 45 minutes and just like shot the shit with me. This wasn't for like content. This wasn't for fucking anything. This was him just like being brutally honest about like why things are the way they are. You know, like this is why it feels this way. And this is kind of how it ended up this way. It's not perfect. We understand that. And like, these are the things we're doing to kind of adjust it. Dude, it is so fucking different than how Valve approaches it, right?
No, it is. And the Riot employees, the devs, they're all fans of the game too. They're fans of the esport. And so it's very easy to have conversations with them.
What do you think about like the tournament structure though? Like the devs being like super hands-on, say like VCT, versus like the open circuit in CS. Like as a competitor in both, I have like kind of mixed thoughts here. So I'm curious what yours are, because you were also a pro in, well, I wasn't really a pro in Valorant, but you were a pro in both of them. So like what do you feel like is, I guess, like the better system?
As a player, it's definitely an open circuit. I feel like you have more control of your fate and also more like negotiating power as a player. Like open circuit, if you are valuable as a player, if you are valuable as a team, like you have worth, like you're able to showcase that, you're able to like use that. Just the opportunity to play like Valorant right now, this closed circuit franchising, it's just so limited. It's so limited. There's lots of talent that just like doesn't get the chance to compete, doesn't get the chance to showcase their talent, and the matches are so infrequent that everything relies on just a handful of matches. Like one match could really like define your career, and it might not paint the whole picture. I think franchising ultimately is probably better for like sustainability and like these companies to actually bring in revenue and stuff, but I think they messed up by making it too few spots. It's
too, sorry, what's that?
Too few spots.
Like, too few spots. Like only 5 for NA to start is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think they messed up. I think that's caused a lot of problems. It's like, you know, all the drama right now with the salaries and stuff. I think that it's not like these companies handed out these contracts and these massive salaries and said, whoops, we can't afford this. Like we didn't forecast that this was gonna happen. We can't afford this. Like, no, they kind of realized that right now in the scene, in the market, and behind the scenes, it's like orgs own all the power. They know that no matter what, they can get a kid that will sign league minimum contract with pretty bad contract, and they will play in the league because it's an opportunity to play in VCT. And that's kind of like given orgs all the negotiating power and all the control over the spots, and so it's made it quite difficult for players to like.
Yeah. No, I feel you, like, because I mentioned this a lot. Like initially there was only like 5 duelist slots, 5 sentinel slots, 5 controller slots. You know, like you go down the list, like that is very few professional players in all of North America. And the way it typically pans out is that North American teams are more willing, it seems like, to import players. So like those slots don't even go to like true North American players a lot of the times. Like Saucy and Pancata, for example, coming in from Brazil as like imports. You know, like that happens quite frequently with these big NA orgs that are willing to like splash and like make those purchases. And obviously like that's probably kind of how they got to where they are. It's fucking crazy, dude. Like when I saw that like EG news, like how did you feel about that? Like that was That was fucking crazy, dude. Like the fact that they wouldn't even keep their salaries the same. They can't even give the same money. They have to take like a 50% decrease.
Yeah, so what I was saying is like I don't think the salaries are all justifiable. I do think there's a correction needed, but it's quite extreme right now. Like what's happening? Like the EG situation is an example of like an extreme like correction. Also, there's like a stigma in the separation of tier 1 and tier 2. I've noticed they've done a really good job of separating the two. They really focus on franchising, and they, as they call it, tier 1, and they want to make that their prime product, and these are the best players in the world. And they've made sure that there's no crossover. So people really think that tier 2 is like a step down from the VCT teams, and that's not the case. Like people think EA was going to come in at like DSG and just absolutely farm tier 2 because they're considered tier 2. And now they're saying he's washed. But Ye's still the same incredible player. It's just the talent in challengers is actually stacked. Like, people don't realize that. And this is like going to be hard to believe. Like I think people now are going to have a hard time accepting this. But EG got second place at Masters Tokyo, won champs. These players, almost none of them would have been considered for a franchising team other than Ethan. If EG wasn't a franchise slot. None of the players on the team would have been considered. I can guarantee say that, like, I know the conversation with teams. If EG wasn't a spot in franchising, I think Ethan might have been the only player in question for a franchising spot.
That's actually facts, by the way. That's hard facts. That's something I said a lot behind closed doors. Is like, that's why I respected the fuck out of like a lot of the decisions Potter made. Like, everyone was asking for Com to get cut at the start of that season. Like, no one thought Com was like a franchise player, and he proved everyone wrong. But he didn't get that chance like on his own accord. Like, there were so many players that were like pushed for ahead of time, and BCJ getting benched for like Demon 1, like that is an insanely ballsy move by Potter. And honestly, like, she saw stuff that the community clearly didn't, right? But like, then to have all of this happen at the end, it's I don't know. I don't know like how I feel about it all. Like the fact that like MCE had the best record in like NA VCT and lost his job. I mean, there's like a lot of craziness because of like the franchise league. I do just think simply like the NA teams probably don't have enough slots. Like it seems like we're a pretty big region, right? Like I watched like all of Challengers. I loved watching it. I think the level of play in Challengers NA is insane with like you guys. Well, when you were playing for G2, I thought you guys were really fucking good. You were stacked with skill and you played well. I thought obviously Guard, M80, Moist, like there was Oxygen. Like there's all these teams. I mean, how did you guys like? Were you guys competitive in scrims against the VCT teams when you played them?
Yeah, always. There was no clear distinction between VCT teams and like challengers, like the top challengers teams. Even teams, you know, like Oxygen, like Moist. I don't think people realize the skill, like the skill difference in these teams is actually not that much because you never get to see them play versus each other. Yeah.
Would you say it's because I have my opinions as like someone that like kind of coach under Thieves, as well as like my experiences as like a pro player in CS. Do you think it's harder to play like challengers where the skill level is super high and maybe like the data isn't as well documented on the teams? Like I almost think it might be harder to get through challengers to some extent. Like there's only one team that can make it for like the entire region to Ascension.
No, it's a gauntlet. Like it's actually brutal to make it through challengers, to make it through Ascension, to actually get a spot. It's not easy. And it, like the talent is stacked. It's like rotating as well. Like last season I noticed in franchising, because of the roster locks, like some of the teams kind of checked out. Like,
really?
Like some teams couldn't change their roster and you can tell they like checked out.
What's that? Oh, franchising.
Yeah, the franchise teams, because the roster locks were so strict.
No, I felt that too. Like, and I think in addition to that, there was a lot of like homesick players in like the LATAM teams and like the Brazilian teams. Like they were having a really hard time, I think, in LA whenever I would like talk to them or see them around the studio. So that was kind of like a sad thing to see. What was like your time like on G2? Because like you guys started insanely hot, right? Like you placed second in the first split and then kind of like fizzled out a bit in the second. Like what was the reason for that?
Yeah, so we had a really good start. Placing second, but I think that second placing on split one kind of just became irrelevant because of how everything went afterwards. Um, I think that so going into split two, we knew we were already qualified, and so we wanted to start like experimenting with our comps on maps and using the matches, and so we ran some troll comps. I wish I like kind of put my foot down a bit more on it, but like with the vision that like, okay, we're gonna run this Viper comp on Haven without a Sentinel, but then
The double
when we play
duelist
it,
that you guys are running.
this one was, I don't remember if this one was double duelist. We had that double duelist. That was like,
That was
so
sick.
some maps the comp was mine, and like so the strats and stuff were mine, and then some maps were Imi, and the strats and stuff were his. On those maps we kind of delegated it. Like the neon sky comp on Haven was Imi's comp, and like that's something like stubborn Shahz would have never like come up with because it's so off meta, but we made it work like during split one. But then like, so the goal was like on Haven we ran like this Viper comp during the regular season without a Killjoy, but then we were gonna run it later on in playoffs with like a Sentinel in the actual comp. But I just felt like we were kind of wasting these matches and like making us look like a weaker team by doing these like testing comps during the regular season, even though we qualified. And I think it killed the confidence of the team.
Do you think that's what happened to like NRG, like throughout VCT? I feel like NRG, when I like think back to like their VCT season, they were fucking around with their comps too, and it's an easy trap to fall into. Like I would want to do it too. I'm not gonna lie. Like
when we scrim NRG, they would run like a different comp every time. They would like we scrimmed against them early on in the season, and they ran the Viper Harbor on Haven, but then they used their standard comp on Haven. Like in the next match, I watched them play because I was like excited to see like how this works out. So I mean it's good. I think if they're like running comps like like the Brazilian teams ran the Viper Harbor like on Haven as well, so maybe you understand it better. So if you do play against it, you do understand its like strengths and weaknesses. But also on GT, I think we were like plagued with role issues. We had like Whippy who filled smokes, and I think he did a good job. And then Penny was on flex, but I think that ultimately we were so excited about Oxy's skill, like he's incredible as a player on Jet. But it probably would have been better to have him on the flex role and Penny on Jet, just for like comfortability, because like Oxy could play anything. And,
really, I should know that. He's insane.
Ranked. He's so good. The players that play a ton of ranked like learn to fill every role, and like I think that people think too strictly about roles. Like this guy's a Sentinel player, he can't play controller. This guy's a flex, he can't play like initiators, like scan initiators. But the people that play the game a lot, it's very easy for them to like switch roles, transition roles. Like
especially like the really good players. Like you also like know as like a top duelist what good initiator util looks like. Like you're like okay, this is what really good initiators do to like shut me down, or like this is what I need to get activated. So like it's very easy for you to probably like make that transition if you really wanted to. Now like the timings of everything take like a little bit of work to get used to, but I agree. Like watching even someone like Asuna, who is like a duelist, play like initiators, how he calmed and how he uses his util, it's like he has like a different appreciation for every piece of util he throws, like. And I say that like when you play initiator too, like I don't know if that's what you're gonna be playing if you play again, because you played like obviously top level duelist and now initiator. Like what would you lean into? Like what do you like more?
I think I'll always love opping. Like that's what I spent my entire CS career doing and stuff. But if I'm ever in like a IGL role, like some sort of like mid rounding role, like initiator, I feel super comfortable. Like I actually love playing the role. You get to float and roam more. You're more concerned about rotates and like filling in the gaps, and I think like I feel like really comfortable with having like a visual of the map, and so it's a lot of fun for me to play.
Dude, what do we cook up right now to get Riot to get an op in an initiator's hands? Is it even possible? Is it even possible?
That's what I always said, was that if they wanted to like fix the game during the chamber time period and like Jet being like OP, is that the fact that they have a gun in the game that is really only viable on one agent. Yeah,
like, or chamber. Like it has to be one of those two, right?
Yeah, and so I think that's like a flawed way of approaching it. Like there shouldn't be a gun in the game that's ultimately viable in like 1 or 2 agents.
Yeah.
So what they should have done like at the time was like nerf chamber, like nerf jet, and buff the op, so that like you could see like a variety in comps and like other agents like pick up the op when they see like suitable. But like I don't
bring
know
back
if
the
it'll
jump
happen.
op. Remember the jump op, dude? Like the landing.
Yeah, let's not bring that up. Let's not bring that.
People would like. I would just ping corners and just jump peek them.
You know, that like brought me back to like when I was in high school and I played Counter-Strike Source, and that's all it was. The interp was so bad in that game. All the operators, like I was an operator in that game, just jump peek everything, and you could never react to it. They'll kill you in the air on like your screen.
So fast, dude. In beta, that shit was so fast.
It was so dumb.
So, I actually don't think it's possible to get like an op in an initiator's hands. Like, I can't think of anything that like they would do for an initiator.
No,
but,
they would just have to like. It's just not ideal.
That's like in their ads and stuff for champions, they were showing like Fade with an op, and I was like, we will never, ever, ever see that in a pro. like bro, like Fades never have ops, but yet they show like these images of it.
Yeah,
I don't know. What would you change then, like in Valorant right now? Like, what do you think? What do you think is like wrong with the game competitively, if there is anything? Do you think they're like heading in the right direction with like limiting abilities lately, like upping orb counts for ults, or do you think it's like heading in the wrong direction? Because you can go either way here.
But I think they are heading in the right direction. But you know what I've noticed is that like ultimately aimers are prevailing, like which makes sense. Like it's attack FPS is kind of what you want. But at like the start of the game, like I noticed that like it was very easy to take dry fights, right? And so you never wanted to really take a dry fight because mechanically the skill gap felt lower than like when you transition from CS:GO. So you always want to have an advantage in a fight, whether it's like a stun, a flash, or like some sort of anything. Like, but now there's so much util to flush you out. It almost feels like if you have an opportunity to take a dry fight, like you should take it.
Really?
Like because those opportunities are so limited now. You know, like with the amount of util and like the way that teams flush out areas and default and map control. That if you do have an opportunity for like a fair 1v1, like you should take it.
Yeah.
Like that's like a pretty big switch from how like the game started out, where it was all about like holding on util, trading util, and like, you know, making sure that you didn't commit to like a dry 1v1.
Yeah.
That's
no, I know what you mean. I think like the teams that are willing to take those fights, even in like the most aggressive ways, like when you watch like someone like Paper Rex play, and just the way I'm thinking back to like the Pearl clip where he kills a guy like Link and then he updraft dashes like back into, you know, heaven and he gets a kill up there. It's like that seems outrageous, but he's just like taking fights as quick as possible before there's any counter util. Like
that's what I call jet brain.
Yeah.
That's what I call jet brain. Like when you have a jet player like that and you go into VOD review and like they updraft dash into heaven and they die, like you realize that you can't. Okay, ultimately it's the bad play, right? Like you had a man advantage situation, you gave it up. But you can't let your jet not make those plays. Like you can't start like railing them back in. Like you have to let them have some sort of jet brain to like an extent. You know, there's like obviously like
you can't play like too buttoned up. Like,
yeah.
I feel like if you take no risks on jet, you lose. And I feel like honestly a little bit probably NRG suffered from that. Like they were like too textbook with their jet play. Whereas like you watch someone like Paper Rex or you watch, you know, like Demon One play jet. A lot of it is like outside of the playbook, probably like his plays. I'm sure he definitely does a lot of set play shit too. But do you think like the game? How do you think the game is trending when like you think of like overall play style? Do you think it's something like PRX, EG that's like set play? PRX obviously a lot more fast pace and random. EG more slow, methodical, or do you think it's like loud NRG style, which is like, I don't know, like more like map control, kind of, it feels a little bit more CS style, if you know what I mean.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I think there's so many variables in the game that like you can almost make different styles viable, but I think the styles that are more scripted, if you're going around and it's fully scripted, are just never gonna work to win you like a tournament. I think that you need to have like protocols, and you need people to understand how to react and like what's expected out of them in certain situations rather than a full script. Like I've seen teams run full scripts and they'll like win you matches, but I think that when it comes down to like setups changing, comps different. You're gonna face different like variables. You know, you're gonna face different looks from other teams that you need to know how to react.
Yeah.
And so that's like the struggle as an IGL is like, okay, how heavy do I script out around? How heavy do I script out a strat? And like I've just noticed that those teams kind of just reach a limit.
Yeah, there's like a shelf life on their comps, right?
Yeah.
Like when that's what happens. Like a lot of times when I'm watching like Paper X play, I'm like, holy shit! Like the stuff they're doing is insane, but they need like more layers. They need like an onion, right? Where they like peel back and they have like a new play off of this. But when I watch them play, like say like Pearl, it's a very similar A exec, and then it's a very similar B exec. And I think like that kind of runs out of steam deep in tournaments, and they're gonna get there eventually. Like teams just keep adding stuff right over time. But I agree. I think like it needs to be some kind of like hybrid mixture between the two.
Just the same thing as like CS. Like I remember like we would have some set execs, and then we would have like kind of looser like defaults, and like we understood how to react to certain situations. But I think this game has just so many layers to that, and like you have to just take like reps and understand what's expected out of you.
Yeah, I think like that's where I think the like second team for EG helped out a lot. Is like they could do their styles, and then apparently like their second team would like dry run the strats of the enemy team, like from when I've talked to them. And they would even run like the Harbor Reina and shit like on Ascent against them, which is like an insane value add, right? Like then it really decreases the variance when you see it.
Yeah, so like when you scrim against like the meta comps, you know, like everyone on Ascent runs the same Omen, Sova, Killjoy, you know, Jet, Gale. It's very easy to understand like what options the other team has to do, like what teams tend to do, what to look out for. But when you play like a different comp, when Viper Harbor started to come out, like when you play the Harbor Reina, you could watch the VODs as a team, but you won't really understand the timing of things. You won't really understand how to play against it, or like what you expect to see until you actually play against it.
Yeah.
Like that's the benefit of like cheese comps, like our Sky Neon comp on Haven. It was a cheese comp. It's so limited in what we could do, but people aren't used to playing against it. People aren't used to seeing a neon wall up in a site and a stun that stuns everything in a flash. Like it has a shelf life, like you said, but having a team that can replicate that and scrim against them, like I think that's pretty OP. Like that's like where like esports would really advance into like another world where you have like these reserve teams that you can practice against.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. When like Screwface was telling me they did that shit, I was like, that's insane. And it's no more though, because they've all been fired. So.
Yeah, but I think is that because like they didn't value what they got out of it, or like I'm also confused because like in theory, as someone that would like structure a team, like that is crazy to me. Like that is really good.
Yeah, at the time it was like, what the fuck are they cooking? But like after the fact, it's like, oh, that really helped them a lot. Like I'm certain of it. Something I heard when I was coaching 100 Thieves from the players, and you kind of alluded to it, so I'm curious what your thoughts are. It's hard to have this mindset as a pro, but I've heard it so much. They think there's like inherent variance at the pro level of Valorant. Like you can't like account for all the variables. You can't control everything. Like you said, like sometimes you just want to take random fights ahead of util, and there's only so many protocols and so much planning you can have at the pro level. Do you think there's like too much variance in Valorant?
You absolutely cannot account for everything. And that's where you need to trust your players.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like you have 5 brains on the team. Like these are players, like full on brains, not just because you're a coaching staff or an IGL. Like you need people that are just well rounded, that know, like that will like you trust to make the right decision.
Yeah. That's actually exactly what we said yesterday too. It's like it's not on the coach and like the leader of the team. It is to a certain extent, like certain things you should focus on. Like if you want to break the Reina Lear, if you don't want to break the Reina Lear, if you don't want to break the Star, do, and like you can filter them in certain ways. But a lot of it is like, how are you going to react to this thing you've never fucking seen before? And is it going to be the right thing that you come and ask for in the heat of the moment? I feel like that is so different than Counter-Strike. Like there's shit that happens on like the pro level and like in your guys' games, even in like challengers, that it's all just like on the fly thinking and who can think the quickest.
No, 100%. I think that like yeah, when you see things that are repeated, when you see things in VOD review that is on like, you know, the coaching staff, the IGL to address and say, hey guys, like when we approach this, like don't do this or do this or wait for this, you know. But when you get into like a game and something unique comes up, like ultimately the player has to make like the right decisions too. And yeah, it's impossible. I don't know if there's too much variance, but like you can't account for everything. Like you just can't. You'll spend forever.
With that said, do you think like Fnatic are considered like the greatest Valorant team? The fact that like they did win so much consistently this year, even though they didn't win champions, like how do you like hold that like a team like that in your head?
I think so. I think like bringing consistency in this game is incredibly difficult. And like they probably have the most well-rounded team like to do that, in my opinion. Like when I see those players, like you can tell when like something is part of like a bigger plan. You can tell when like a player just makes like a smart decision. I think when you watch the game a lot, and like they have not just talented players but like smart players.
Yeah, because like everyone always compliments like their protocols and all this and that, but like a lot of it is they have players that know when to make individual plays, and that is like that's a fucking hard thing to like set in stone. I'm sure you're like aware of that as like an in-game leader. It's like, when do you give your like smokes player or your initiator like freedom to make that play? Like how often do you want like Alfie or fucking picking places as a Cypher or like a Killjoy? Because like it feels like they figured that shit out. Like I don't know how.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like when you watch Alfie play, like, you know, like he's got a whole setup behind him, but he goes for that one sometimes. And like that's trusting the player. I think that's trusting the player. And like when players like really play the game well or like understand the game, they feel more comfortable like making the right decisions.
Speaking of hard decisions, I was gonna like pivot this, like what, because this was like fucking crazy. Like this is crazy. When you left Sentinels, like you and I think like Rob Moore got in like beef and shit. Like all kind of crazy shit happened. Like I think they like kind of blindsided you about like not being in VCT. I don't want to focus on like the actual bickering like back and forth or whatever. Like honestly, I think that's been kind of beaten to the ground. But like, what was it like after that happening, like watching VCT? Because obviously like you were a top in-game leader in Valorant since day one. I felt like you earned your spot in VCT, and then all of a sudden like the rug was pulled out from under you like right at the finish line, and you know, like missing that opening season. Like was that something like super frustrating for you, or were you over it pretty quick? Like how'd that work out?
I think it was pretty frustrating. Or like not frustrating. I wasn't like angry or like frustrated. I was more so sad. Yeah. That, like that's all you're looking forward to. Like, you know, franchising coming and playing on the stage, playing in front of fans. Like all the tournaments we went to, we didn't have a crowd, like with COVID and stuff. So it was quite disappointing. Like the whole year like left me so unsatisfied. Like all of 2022, all the things that happened in that year were just so tragic. Like I swear, like you come out with like a documentary about how like the downfall of Sentinels and like how unfortunate some of the things that just happened and that year played out. Was like it sucked. It killed like our stockest players on the team. While we really couldn't come out and like, you know, air out like all the things that went wrong, you know, we kind of just had to deal with it. And so like understanding that like it was a very unfortunate year, ultimately like unlucky, we thought we would still have the chance to like reset with a roster, like a full roster, going into VCT. Like like people say like, oh, you know, like Sentinels are so bad they fell behind the meta, but the whole year we didn't really have 5 players to practice with. Yeah,
that was like the rumor when like I was coaching under Thieves. It's like, oh, there's always like something wrong with this team. Like, you know, this person didn't show up for practice, or like that happened. And I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of craziness going on behind closed doors as well. Like, I think you were dealing with a lot at that time, like in your individual life. Like, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but if not, like your father obviously like passed during like that time frame. And I mean, that is super rare for like a pro player to deal with that. And I felt like you handled it like really well, and you honestly like kept playing through it. Like that had to be like so fucking hard. Obviously that was hard, bro. Like
Yeah.
you never really talked about that though a lot publicly, I feel like.
No, I think when that happened, that was like right after first strike, or right before first strike when that happened. I was in shock. I think, like, looking back, I didn't really process everything that was happening, and so like I was just in my room like playing, and I was just playing, and like looking back, I realized that I was actually in shock and I didn't process, and I think it took some time. Like, and ultimately like time heals all, I guess. Like it takes time, but I think more so because like things happened so suddenly, and like we weren't prepared for it. The bigger concern was like making sure I could take care of like everyone back home, because back home I have my mom, my grandma, and my aunt that live at home, and like now I take care of all of them, you know, like I take care of all the finances and stuff, like, and I have a brother to help me. But like that was like the biggest thing, like, oh, where do I start? Like, what, I don't even know what I'm doing, like, because he handled everything. So yeah, it was a lot of like I was just like bouncing back and forth and just making sure that handle everything.
Dude, yeah, man. Like I'm like thinking back to like those messages like back then, and that was like the early days of like COVID, and that was like, it was just, bro, I felt so bad for you, and you still like kept at it. And I mean, you guys dealt with so much shit, like the tens buyout, like crazy shit that was just like had to be rattling the team from the inside, like the Zoms versus Brazil, the fucking the tens shit. Like, dude, there's so many crazy things.
Like, and that's like what people are saying. Like, there could be a movie about like the whole rise of like Sentinels and like the downfall. Like, when we were at the peak of things,
yeah,
it literally felt like we turned into like superstars. Like, I don't even like mean to like sound crazy saying that, but just we went from like playing the game like during COVID and stuff, but as COVID died down, we never felt the impact of how popular we got, because we were just in our rooms all the time. Like, we couldn't go outside, things were shut down. But then I started to go outside and I couldn't go anywhere without getting stopped.
That's
also
crazy.
Like, I had my bleached hair, and so then I like every time I went, like, I stopped going outside as much. When I go outside, I like make it a game, and like how many times I'd get recognized? 20, 25.
This is in fucking Texas too, right? This is in Texas. Like,
yeah,
that's insane. Like,
it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
that's really crazy. And like Texas, that's the case, because that sometimes happens in like SoCal or like, you know, like esports areas like New York or something. But in Texas, like that's, man, the game just got really, really big, like super quick. And like you guys were like on top of the world, and you had to go through like so much craziness and just the fallout from that. So like I know you reached out to me, but like whose choice was it to like not have a coach in that time frame? Because you guys, I know personally as an in-game leader, I never wanted one, truthfully, like in CS, because it was very hard for me to like work with someone and like split the load. But in Valorant, that's all changed. What happened with that whole thing in Sentinels?
Yeah, so originally we wanted a coach. We were like running with the punches. I remember you're the first person, like, I remember early Sentinels I spoke to, and like you wanted to go a different direction. And so I was kind of doing everything, and I felt comfortable in my routine. Like, this is early, like before first strike, you know, ignition series time.
Yeah.
Like, I would watch other teams play, I would take my notes, and I was like, okay, like right now I can manage all this. It's working. And we continue through challengers. I remember I'm trying to remember the timeline. Like, I spoke to Slicky at one point. We were gonna bring him on, but he decided he wanted to stay in Europe. And I think that after Iceland, we had also won the regional event right after Iceland, like first exit, and we were still using like our OG comps at that time, and we were getting away with it in NA. Then we went to Masters 3 Berlin, and we were playing at Masters. We started scrimming against the teams. We're scrimming against Gambit. We're scrimming against like a lot of teams at Masters 3 Berlin, and we realized, like, okay, these comps and the stuff we're doing in NA is not working for these teams. Like we need to switch it up. And so literally we got there like a week or two before the event started, and we started to change all our comps.
Oh fuck!
Going into Masters 3 Berlin, yeah, because we realized in scrims, like, dude, NA's behind. like the comms that we got away with in NA, like we're winning, it's not gonna work for C teams. Like we need like to stray a little bit from double duelist. We need to bring in like the initiators.
Was that the tourney you guys had like a 3-team group or some shit?
Yeah, so we like beat GT the first time, and then we shouldn't have played them again. But because of the 3-team group, we had to play them again. It was quite unfortunate how that got structured. But that was like where I think we dropped the ball. That tournament, I could say, like we dropped the ball in terms of like preparation and stuff because it worked in NA. So we were like, when you're winning, it's hard to really tackle like we should change our comps. You know, like it's hard to really go to that like POV like, dang, like we might need more because it's working. Like we won the regional event in NA. So going to Master Berlin, we realized like if I had a coach at that time period, maybe it would have helped.
I don't think it would have though. Like, and this is because I talked to like Minnie about this at Champions, like at the after party, because he was obviously down that they didn't win Champions. But I was like, I don't know. You had like such a hard job here because you literally did not lose all year. And people are like, well, why did they switch their comps? Like, why are they not playing Pearl? I'm like, well, you weren't saying that when they're fucking winning. Like, you know,
it's hard.
It's hard to decide like when to switch comps if you don't lose. Like that is a very difficult like decision to make. And I totally understand that. And then I can't remember, did you guys miss out on Champions?
No, so we were qualified for Champs. We went to Champs that year. And that's when we brought Raucus with us, actually. I never spoken to Raucus before. It was actually Zom's idea because I just wanted someone to bring. And then I started talking with him and he was like smart. And I was like, okay, this will be a really good help. And going into Champs 2021, it was 2021. Yeah. We were very prepared. Like our comps were meta comps, in my opinion, and we had everything we needed to win the tournament. I never felt better going into a tournament with like our preparation and stuff. Better than Iceland, like better than all the regionals. And we choked that tournament. Like people think that we weren't up with the meta, but we choked. Both the series we lost versus Liquid and KRU, we were up 8-4 on defense split and choked. And like the most tragic rounds, like I could vividly recall the rounds that we like left the spike and everyone died. Like we had this like and everyone died like last second. It was tragic. But that tournament, we were so prepared and ready to win that tournament, and we choked as players, if that makes sense. Like just some of the worst decisions I've seen. Maybe it was pressure, maybe it was like we overworked. Yeah. But as players, we failed that tournament.
That's crazy. Yeah, I didn't remember this game, but now it's coming back to me here. Like, yeah, you guys had those 2 8-4 halves against Crew, and they won all the pistols in those games, actually.
Yeah.
In the 13-11s. And then versus Liquid, I do remember this Breeze game. Like, this Breeze game, I remember, because I was like, oh, this shit is over. And then
was the classic.
I gave you like literally the caster's curse from like behind closed doors. I was like, this shit is over. And then all of a sudden they started like clawing back in. And I was like,
and versus them on split 2 and Crew on Haven was one of those tragic rounds. It was like a 3v5 or something on A site. Like I'm actually getting like trauma thinking about this. We were set to win this tournament. I'm telling you, like I'd never been so confident. We were ahead of everything. And like we just choked the dumbest rounds.
I think I actually heard a lot of rumors that you guys were like owning people in scrims like around that time.
Yeah, we felt good. It was quite tragic of an event. And then there's just like a long reset before the next year started.
Fuck, that sucks, dude. So what are you looking forward to, I guess, in like 2024, like looking ahead now that we've like looked back? Like, are you just looking forward to like content creation, I guess, for now?
Yeah, so when Challengers ended, I knew I had like the 6-month break period. And that was like a chance for me actually, not just content, but focus on my like health. Like as an esports player and someone that like practices 8 hours a day and then streams for another several hours every night. Like there's a lot of like health things I neglected. Like I gained a lot of weight. Like my diet was screwed. Just getting back in the gym and stuff. So I've like tried to use this like Challengers off season to focus on like my mental health and my physical health and stuff that I've just neglected for 3 years.
Yeah.
Going into 2024, if I have a chance to play in VCT or like a challengers team that like, you know, it feels like is strong or like a good decision for me, and like I want to compete. Competing just always driven me with my passion. Like if I wanted to stream, I think I would have like stepped away from competing after that champs tournament or something. You know, I had like crazy offers at the time to like pursue full-time streaming, and like I like chose to compete. And, like that's like just kind of what's like driven me. So if that happens, if not, I'm still on my G2's pro contract, and like I'm honoring that by streaming right now. And then next year the roster restrictions are lifted, like they're a lot more laxed. So hopefully there will be like more opportunities to like compete, if that's the case. Like
so you're referring to like the no like roster lock and stuff, and like being able to sign as like a temp on like a independent contractor type deal. I saw that was actually really cool, because I thought EA got like super fucked. Like what kind of esport has like their top player of the prior year just like miss out on an entire year is crazy. That's actually crazy. That's so crazy that happened to him. And like obviously like it wasn't too smart of an idea to go down like that wasn't a good idea by him, like for his stock and like his individual value. But as a competitor, he like needed
wanted to play.
Like, he needed to play. And like that's so fucked, like honestly, like that whole system. So I'm so glad that that's fucking gone.
I really feel for him, because like I understand his POV as a competitor. Like you can't sit around and watch. Like if you have a chance to play, and like while you're waiting, like you should ultimately, right? Like you should still be a part of like the system. But the stigma around tier 2 hurt his stock. Like people expected him to just farm and hard carry, and they don't realize that like, yo, challengers is stacked. Like these players are good too. And
it's also just it's difficult to like hard carry in Valorant at this point. Like, do you think it's even like, I guess it must be like somewhat possible. We've seen it in like the past tournaments, but do you think there's like consistency in that with the patch updates?
Like being harder to carry, or like
like because they could instantly like just like nerf your agent, you know? Like, do you think it's even possible to like have like a simple in Valorant?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think like players' impact is also limited by the roles they play, right? Like like you don't know what results like Alpha could put out on Jet, right? But sometimes he's gonna play a more restricted role, like restricted like round, because of his role, you know? So I think it's gonna be rare to see like a simple in Valorant.
I agree.
Things rotate too much.
Dude, I think, hold up. Do you know his fucking like entry rate at Champions? Do you remember that? So
is it insane?
It's fucking insane. Hold up. I want to say it's like over 20% in group stage. Let me see.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So he only played Killjoy in groups, and his first kill per round is 21%. Like, how the fuck is that even possible?
That's like, I remember Masters Tokyo, the EG run, Busio had their most like entries. I'm pretty sure had their most first engagements like on the team.
Ridiculous.
On only Killjoy, and like
he's number 1 in all of groups.
Yeah,
it's fucking silly.
Crazy.
Like when I see something like that, I'm like, ooh, maybe it is possible. But like, how would you do that consistently in a game like Valorant? So I don't know, man. That's like something I think we're gonna have to like wait and see. But like, there is a lot of changes like consistently to this game. But yeah,
Chamber was the closest like we had to that.
That's true.
Like the Chamber meta is fucked. Like
you don't miss it?
Hard carry.
You don't miss it?
Not.
Okay.
No. Bro, we resort at one point we resorted to like triple initiators just to flush out these chambers.
Dude, yeah. Actually, remember, like you would literally have to like be perfect with util.
No, literally we ran perfect. 3 initiators on some maps. We literally ran 3 initiators.
Is that the breeze comp you're thinking of?
We ran a breeze comp with it. We ran a ascent comp, like the DRX comp with it, just to flush out these chambers. Like,
yeah.
And like ultimately, like they were pretty good. Like you could make it work, but
you guys were cooking. That was like that LCQ run, your last run.
Yeah, the LCQ run with Shroud. Yeah, it was.
Shroudy. He was actually really good, but
yeah, he was. No, that was quite unfortunate.
All right, one last question. Have you played CS2?
I played the first beta when they like first came out with it, but I haven't played the most recent one with the ranking.
No interest. You're over it.
I want to check it out. I just like I don't know. I've just been like playing so much Valorant, like addicted to like playing ranked and stuff. I'm not gonna lie, it's been like good to me lately. So
no, I feel you. Like that's how I feel about it too. It's hard to like split time between the two. I like the movement a lot in Valorant because it feels like 1.60 to me, and CS2 still feels a bit clunky. But I was curious what your thoughts were as someone that played both. So
dang, I have to give CS2 like a proper run.
Yeah.
But it like I'll watch some streams like, and the graphics like on high, it looks like a completely different game.
Yeah.
But then like I was watching Ryan stream last night or like the other night, and his game looked exactly like CS:GO. Like,
bro, you know that man has everything on low, like maximizing every setting, like fucking reading every thread.
Game looked exactly like CS:GO.
That's so
I'll
funny.
give it a shot,
dude. Yeah, you have to tell me what you think about it. I'm curious.
Okay.
All right, bro. It's been good catching up, and good luck in the next year. I want to see you play. I'm not gonna lie. So
thanks,
you know,
man.
I always root for you.
We'll see what happens.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for talking, bro. Peace.
Sounds good. Later.